members of the executive, deans and heads of schools, members of the academic community from UKZN and our sister universities, staff and students, alumni, members of the public, friends, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. Good evening, Sanibonani. As Deputy Vice-Chancellor of the College of Humanities, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to this evening's inaugural professorial lecture, which will be delivered by Professor Suramuthi from the School of Social Sciences. The title of his lecture is Science in South Africa, the Nexus of Networks, Collaboration and Productivity. An inaugural lecture is an occasion of significance in an academic staff member's career at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, as it is at most universities across the world. Inaugural lectures provides academics who have been appointed as full professors the opportunity to inform colleagues, the university, community, and general public of their work to date, which could include current research as well as future plans. It is common practice that the lecture is delivered within a year of the appointment. Recently, I was asked why a professor is doing an inaugural when he had been a professor for a number of years. The answer is that he was an associate professor and has now attained the level of full professor. Today, Professor Suramuthi, by presenting this lecture, makes the public transition from associate professor to full professor. It is a rite of passage. The inaugural lecture is a celebratory ceremonial occasion. Full professorship is the most senior academic title that one obtains in a university. As many of us can attest to, the title reflects many years of focus, hard work, sleepless nights, and stresses with editors of journals, spouses and partners accusing you of not spending enough time with them, and various other stresses. The professorship, in addition, also demonstrates academic maturity and leadership in your discipline. These lectures are also very special to our university and college, as it shares publicly our intellectual talent that resides within the college and, of course, the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Professor Suramuthi holds his professorship in the College of Humanities, the largest college in the university, where we are nearing the 18,000 mark in terms of registered students. His school, the School of Social Sciences, currently has 3,014 registered students and 73 staff members, of which 61 are academics. Including Professor Suramuthi, the school now has 6 full professors. We applaud them for this output. Tonight, I present to you a colleague who has done an extensive amount of research, teaching, publication, and service to the community. The acting dean and head of school, Professor Mutula, will share our esteemed colleagues' academic credentials and achievements with you. Professor Suramuthi, on behalf of the University of KwaZulu-Natal and the College of Humanities, I congratulate you on your achievement to professorship. I thank you.
The Deputy Vice-Chancellor and Head of College of Humanities, Professor Shero Podhita, the DVC and Head of College of Law and Management, Professor John Mupangisi, Deans and Heads of Schools here present, beloved students, invited guests, fellow colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. It gives me great pleasure to introduce and present to you the inaugurant of this event, Professor Suramuthi. Professor Suramuthi, once known as Muthi, is now called Surya. I believe he has some interesting stories to tell about how his name became his surname, and surname became his name. I will leave it to him to say more about this nomenclatural transformation. I met Surya for the first time in 2011 when I joined the then School of Sociology and Social Studies in Pietermaritzburg. He was then acting head of school. He drove from Durban to Pietermaritzburg to meet and welcome me into the school and the university. He explained to me in very gentle and humble voice, yet quite categorical, of what was expected of me. He said then to me that resources were not a problem at this university. He immediately made available at my disposal 24,000 rands for my preliminary research endeavors. He also made sure I had a well-furnished office with a telephone, new computer, and printer. It was clear my job had been clearly cut out and no compromises would be entertained. Since my first encounter with Professor Surya Mudhi, I find him a pragmatic and hands-on person, very passionate about his work, which he does with gusto and finesse. He loves teaching and yet excels in research. His contribution to the research, teaching, and administrative portfolios in the School of Social Science is remarkable. Surya joined UKZN in 2002 as a senior lecturer to teach research methodology in the sociology program. He left us unexpectedly in 2012 for a year to join the University of Calgary in Canada as a research consultant, but suddenly came back in 2013. When I recently asked him why he came back so soon, he confided in me without elaborating that UKZN is like no other university. But I also suspected that the inclement weather in Canada may have played some part. Professor Surya Mudhi completed his degree in science with a first class. He switched his focus of interest from chemicals, plants, and animals to human beings, leaving science against the wish of his father, who wanted to make him a medical doctor, but he chose sociology. Surya completed his master's in sociology as a top rank holder of the University of Kerala at a prestigious institution, Loyola College of Social Sciences in India. He believes that the intensive training he underwent at his master's level in one of the Jesuit institutions under the Jesuit tradition of magis, meaning excellence, made a lasting impact on his academic and personal development. Following this, he worked for his PhD, again under a Jesuit professor. By now, he might have been used to a disciplined academic life under the Jesuits. He completed his PhD in consumerism, reconceptualizing the concept to understand consumer behavior, which is acknowledged as a pioneering work in this area. This was in 1993. Surya completed numerous research projects on topics ranging from tribal culture to water management, from extension education to child labor, and from gender issues to NGOs. Some of his funders included organizations such as the International Labour Organization, UNICEF, and National Science Foundation in the US. The setting of his studies was mostly Asia and Africa. He now landed in Science and Technology Studies and enjoying his time with software programs that assist him in his research. Typical to Keralites, those who have studied at Kerala, he moved continents from Asia to Africa to North America. Surya taught courses mostly in research methodology at institutions in India, Canada, and Sweden. Known for his methodology and computer skills, he trained students in methods. The first doctorate in homeopathic science in South Africa was produced by him. He publishes his books with reputable international publishing houses such as Sage, Z Books, and Greenwood Press. He says that most of his books were written with senior academicians, some of them older than his father. Surya currently serves as the associate editor and editorial board member of international journals. He's a C2 NRF-rated scholar, a staunch believer in support, strength, empowerment, and nurturing. Surya is quiet, working personality. He is happily married, he says, to only one wife who is called Renjin, and they are blessed with one son, Dakshin, who are resident in Calgary, Canada. Without therefore much ado, I present to you Professor Surya Mudhi, the scholar, administrator, and father, to inaugurate his lecture titled Science in South Africa, the Nexus of Networks, Collaboration, and Productivity. Professor Surya Mudhi.
Sanibonani Nomke. My sincere thanks to UKZN for this opportunity. Professor Potgieter, DVC of the College of Humanities, other honorable DVCs and members of the executive, Professor Mutula, Acting Dean of the School of Social Sciences, and other respected deans, distinguished guests, dear friends, my well-wishers, my beloved colleagues, both academic and support staff in my department, within the school and outside the school, and students for taking time to attend this function. My gratitude also goes to all the staff at Registrar's Office for organizing this, and my ICS staff, my participants, and my teachers, known and unknown, who led me to use their wisdom, and to my family. Gie bonga kakulu kunina nomke enisile kule lecture. This lecture is about one of the many aspects of science in South Africa, looking at some of its characteristics such as networks, collaboration, and productivity. This falls under the broad area of the sociology of science. I was trained in science, majoring in biology and chemistry. Physics divorced me after 2 years of my partnership with it, as it did not like the way I solved problems. So I parted company with them. In the chemical laboratory, I mixed chemicals and watched the colorful fumes coming out of the conical glass, often getting the wrong suffocating gases for mixing the wrong substances. In the zoology lab, I dissected frogs, earthworms, cockroaches, pinning them onto the board, playing with their internal organs, removing and dislocating them, that I was not supposed to do. In the botany lab, things were little different. You make paper-thin slices of stems and roots, view them under the microscope, and show the xylem and phloem and other tissues to your lecturer. This cross-section, I soon realized that was not the same cross-sectional study we do in the social sciences. You cannot cut slices. Anyway, I left physical labs for the good to land in the human lab. It was in 1986. Immediately after my master's, I had the opportunity to work in a project that investigated how science is used for participatory development. That was a challenging task. This was my first encounter with research, studying science from the social science perspective. The work was later appeared as a book under the imprint of Sage and Said Books. The cover pages of the books published in 1994 under 2 titles. In the late 90s, when the internet and email were becoming accessible to the public, I began to study how this technology is affecting and is going to affect the communication of scientists, particularly in their research. Initially, we examined how they communicate with this new technology in comparison to other means of communication, namely face-to-face postal mail. Postal mail was not known as the snail mail then because email was not reliable at that point in time, telephone and fax. This is called computer-mediated communication. This has gradually led to a focus in how these communication tools were used by scientists to establish and maintain professional contacts. More curious scholars looked at how these led to collaboration. Collaboration studies thus found another areas to connect to, ICTs. Again, people looked for the ways how collaboration is assisting in the production of publication and patents. Studies of this nature pertain mainly to developed countries. Researchers tend to say that mine or ours is the first study in this area. In this case, it was true. Exploring the role of ICTs in scientific research in South Africa is new. Our efforts in this regard opened new areas of research in Africa in general and South Africa in particular. We deviated from the mainstream studies that looked only at the developed countries whose ICT infrastructure was not comparable to that of African countries. This is an emerging area of inquiry. For instance, Katz and Martin's classical piece on what is research collaboration, which received the highest number of citations of more than 2,000, is only 16 years old. Studies now examine how the internet technologies influence contacts, collaboration, and productivity. Studies by Walsh, Burchak, Glaser, and Schramm are examples. When we speak about connectivity in Africa, we need to note that African countries remain on the periphery of internet connectivity. The institutions in Africa and those in advanced world are not comparable in access, capacity, and cost. An African university, on an average, pays 50 to 100 times more than its European and North American counterparts for the same bandwidth. As of June 2012, South Africa is ranked only 5th in Africa among the number of internet users. The percentage of internet penetration in South Africa is only 17%, against 28% for Nigeria, 35% for Egypt, 51% for Morocco, and 28% for Kenya. Then I got another opportunity to work with someone who was the student of Robert Merton at Princeton. Merton, a great sociologist, has done some pioneering work in this area. Sometimes you are not fortunate enough to work or enough to be a student of great people, but you get chance to work with the students of those great people. In that way, I was lucky to be of one of those students. As part of this collaboration, we studied scientists initially from countries such as Ghana, Kenya, and India. These countries were then in different stages of internet connectivity, access, and usage. This lecture summarizes the research which began in 2003 in South Africa. Some of my colleagues asked, "Are you nervous?" I said, "No, daily we have serious problems in the school, so this is not a serious thing. But now I forget to move my slides, so maybe I may be nervous now." These are some of the journals in which the findings of this research have appeared. South African Journal of Science, Social Studies of Science, Scientometrics, Journal of International Development, International Sociology, Journal of Computer-Mediated Communication. I will speak about how these concepts of collaboration, networks through connectivity, and productivity are measured. How can we study these effectively? And some key findings of this research. South African science in the world. In the science citation rank order, South Africa is the only African country that shows up in this ranking. It has secured the 29th position. In the international journal literature, South Africa is the largest country in Africa, accounting for more than 31% of Africa's publication output for 2001 to 2004. 88% of the utility patents of the continent in 2001 to 2004 belonged to South Africa. The country during 2000 to 2010 improved its international standing by 2 positions. How did I conduct this research? This is the result of a combination of methods: historical, scientometric, quantitative, qualitative, and videographic methods. Historical, using documents on the history of science and collaboration in South Africa in clearly distinctive phases. Scientometric method, studying the bibliographic records of research publication of scientists. For this study, I used one of the widely used databases, the ISI Web of Knowledge. The Science Citation Index of this database includes the publications from 1945 onwards, covering a huge number of publication records from the year that these publications were made available in the database, that is, from 1966 onwards. For 2 reasons, there were not many records of South African publications until 1975. Either South Africans were not publishing or their publications were not appearing in the ISI journals. In the first stage of the analysis, I used about 112,000 publication records. You can see the publication counts of South African authors from 1966 to 2010, 15,447. Let me show you some graphs. You can see how the trend of these publications of South African scientists. And you can see the peak point in red. I should have used a different color, eh? Right. Yes, you can see that our productivity is on the increase. In the second stage of the scientometric study, a deeper analysis was envisaged, taking a sample of these publication records from 1966 to 2010. The sample covered only from 1975, when the publications in the database registered some stability, to 2010, with a class interval of 5 years. This means all the records of these chosen years, 75, 80, 85, 90, 95, 2000, 2005, and 2010 were selected. Of course, this was not a small number according to the normal sampling procedures in the social science research. A total of about 25,000 records was captured for analysis.